There are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt a silent question tugging at you when the room is quietest? An ache for meaning just beneath the surface, fuzzy and unsure. Maybe there was a time when the world expected you to be one thing, but your spirit whispered you could be something else. A moment when you longed for permission to believe in something deeper. And to trust the invisible playbook only your heart could see. That's exactly what Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook once felt too. Before the crowds, before the records. Before stadium lights and cameras, there was a kid sitting alone, wondering what's possible. Close your eyes, notice what happens when you let yourself sink beneath the noise. Imagine someone who listens for a voice just underneath the worlds, trading the chaos of expectation for a slow, steady rhythm that feels like their own. We're not here to tally trophies tonight, or to lift up a perfect champion. We're here to honor what happens when a person traces every outward triumph back to a devotion that starts deep within. The kind of devotion that isn't loud, doesn't need applause, but shapes a life day by day in the quiet. Let your breath match this pace with me, slow, patient, gentle as twilight. You're not alone here. In the dark, there's a different kind of seeing, the seeing of the heart. Sometimes what we admire most in others isn't what they win, but what they keep choosing when no one's looking. So, as you relax, let Tom's story meet you where you already are. Pressuring yourself. Trying to live up to old expectations, wishing for a sign you can trust what you feel. This is the space for that, the space for doubt, for longing, for silent knowing. Now let's begin, not with what Tom became, but with an invitation just for you to listen for the quiet call inside and to let it lead, if only tonight. Because somewhere beneath the surface of this story is an inner playbook, maybe not so different after all from your own. There are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt that quiet longing? Not for weightless victory, but for meaning, for something inside you, soft and private, aching to be known in the world. Maybe there was a time when you wondered if your simple routines, your smallest hopes, mattered to anyone but yourself. A moment when you longed for guidance, for a sign that this inner rhythm, this invisible pulse inside your chest, was meant for something. That's exactly what Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook once felt too, in the silent rooms, in the long shadows before dawn. Tonight, let's leave all the headlines, the statues and parades way back in the distance. Drift with me instead, toward the breathless places Tom lived in, the places where tools weren't enough, where numbers couldn't save him, where only presence could. He became an alchemist, not of muscles and touchdowns, but of meaning. His story is really about noticing the space between heartbeats, the wisdom between play calls. This is about learning how to listen inside yourself, no matter what the noise is outside. So let's begin at the place all mystic stories begin, with yearning. Tom's earliest days weren't gilded in stadium lights. Instead, picture a boy in Northern California, the air outside still tender, the sun barely touching the neighborhoods, waking up gentle colors on the walls. His home was filled with ordinary rhythms, morning voices, the clink of spoons, the way daylight crept across the floor, but inside Tom felt something else. A sort of question, a sense that life had a meaning just beneath the surface, like light flickering under deep water. He'd catch himself staring at the ceiling late at night, or watching the wind shake the old trees outside his window. Why did some moments feel so slow, so full, so scared, and others move too fast for him to breathe? Maybe you felt that too, that lump of longing that says, I want to be more, but I don't know what more is. That whisper in your chest when everyone else is asleep, reaching for something you can't name. Tom's first sense of devotion wasn't to football, not even to winning, but to moments. He noticed how his own footfalls sounded on an empty practice field before anyone else arrived. He noticed how his dad's hugs felt like anchors, a reminder that even the strongest people in his life moved with vulnerability. He wondered, quietly, if grown-ups understood their own hidden fears as deeply as kids did. In those years, Tom's longing didn't look special, maybe a little slower to raise a hand in class, a little quicker to offer a laugh when someone else stumbled. His questions sometimes made adults uncomfortable, about why some kids were loved loudly and others only in silence, about why people became so quiet when they thought no one was watching. The truth. He was never just chasing a dream of playing in crowds or being called great. He was listening for something unspoken. Every ordinary day, a rehearsal for presence. The world outside measured him by trophies and grades, but Tom measured himself by how honest his breath could be. Have you ever measured yourself that way, not by what you could show, but by what you could feel? Oh, there's a strange comfort, isn't there, in knowing that even giants were once small, uncertain, afraid of their own softness, that the journey didn't begin with knowing but with not knowing. That quiet, persistent ache, it's not the enemy. Sometimes it's the beginning of a life that matters, just like Tom Brady's was. When he thinks back to cold mornings, to old trees, maybe he doesn't remember the applause or the awards. Maybe he just remembers the feeling that he was alive and watching the light slant through his window and wondering who he was becoming. And maybe, tonight, that's the place where your own story can begin to dream. But not every devotion is born loud and clear. Sometimes it's a flicker, unsteady at first. Tom moved through adolescence tracing the outlines of his own longing. There were moments of boredom, those afternoons when nothing seemed to move fast enough for his restless spirit, but everything around him moved too quickly for his heart to keep up. He grew into his own body slower than others, blossomed late, his arms and legs always just slightly trailing behind his ambitions. He loved games, yes, he loved competition. But underneath the cheers and playful taunts of neighborhood friends, there was a kind of sacred silence. He felt the electricity of potential, the sense that greatness wasn't about beating others, but about waking up an echo in his own bones, something old, something holy. Being underestimated was quietly painful. Coaches overlooked him. Teachers sometimes doubted his seriousness. Even friends, sometimes meaning well, pushed Tom to be realistic. That phrase fell like a stone in his spirit. Be realistic, but each dismissal became a new question. What does it really mean to belong to myself? Does my own devotion matter even if nobody else notices? Late at night, face down on his pillow, Tom would sink into the quiet and search for the part of himself no one else could offer a blueprint for. He started to study himself not out of arrogance but out of reverence. What am I when I'm alone? He wondered. And what is this ache for more, this impossible yearning that refuses to leave even after the last game is played? As he grew, so did his devotion. Not to the playbook alone, but to the mysterious spiritual gravity that pulled him through every mundane routine. Everyone has a place where grace enters quietly. For Tom, it was as if breath itself became the first ritual. The inhale before a throw, the exhale after a mistake, the sacred pauses that separated fear from faith. And maybe, even now, you can feel that in your own life, those rare pauses where the noise fades and something deeper reminds you. You are more than what you do. This is not a story about perfection, but about honoring every day's restless search. Tom Brady's inner playbook wasn't written in ink. It was carved in feeling, each longing, each moment of silence, each shaken confidence, and the silent vow to keep going. Oh, there are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt a pull just beneath the skin, a question that lingers softer than a whisper in the quiet between heartbeats? Maybe there was a night when you laid awake, holding a longing you couldn't quite name, or a morning where the world felt so wide and unfinished, and something inside whispered, "There must be more." Tom Brady once felt this too. Not as champion, not as legend, just as a boy in a room in a world with more hope than certainty. The soul searching for its own name. Perhaps tonight, as you rest with us, his story might sound like echoes of your own, because the longing that shaped Tom's life is not only his. It's the gravity pulling on every sleepless soul, the silent current under every ambition, every quiet yearning for meaning and truth. You never see the stars until you look up into the darkness. You never feel the depth of your longing until silence opens all the doors inside you. Somewhere in each of us there's a playbook unwritten, not for football, but for living, for waking each morning and meeting the chaos with something clean and quietly brave. So slow your breathing. Let the day empty from your chest. Let curiosity be as gentle as the night pressing against your window, because Tom Brady's story is not about winning or losing. It's about listening deeply to the inner voice that waits just behind all the noise. A story where devotion is not a destination but a rhythm, a reason to return over and over to who you are underneath it all. You can close your eyes now if you'd like. Feel your breath become softer, slower. Like gentle rain over summer fields, we are only just beginning. Because the world Tom was born into was not larger than yours, but the questions he asked might have been the very same ones you hold now. Let's slip quietly into the beginning and remember what it means to feel the world for the very first time. Sometimes it begins with a single room, dim light spilling across posters, the smell of ozone and dreams that haven't found their shape yet, a childhood shaped by hope more than certainty. That was Tom's world. No gray legend, no gold, just mornings that began before the sun and nights that ended in silence. Parents moving through their routines. A home alive with the soft weight of expectation, but also protection. Family is a kind of field, it grows you, whether you're ready or not. Tom was not born into brilliance. He was born into questions. Am I enough? Will I be chosen? What does it mean to belong? Some kids carry answers like armor. Not Tom, he carried possibility like a soft pebble in his palm. He watched, he listened. He learned to read the room, the hush in his mother's voice, the quiet pride in his father's silhouette at the window. There were moments when he felt small, like the world was a mountain, and he was just learning how to climb. Schoolyards are strange places, the law of the playground, the shadows of being picked last, the ache of belonging just beyond your fingertips. Tom knew all that. It left its mark not as a wound, but as a longing. Nights when sleep wouldn't come, he'd lie in bed, gazing at the ceiling, listening to the breath of the city beyond his walls, wondering if greatness was something you could borrow or only build one quiet day at a time. Have you ever longed for something more but felt the world wasn't quite ready for you to reach it? Did you ever ask in the stillness, am I allowed to want this much? That was Tom's secret hunger. The hunger for meaning, for a place in the world, shaped by his own hands. He didn't know it then, but the empty spaces, the pauses between achievement, would become the very soil where his devotion would grow. Because sometimes it's not the noise that shapes us, but the quiet, the longing that won't dissolve. The faith that tomorrow will open a door where today there's only a wall. So he learned to wait, to sit inside unknowing, to let restlessness teach him about faith. A restless spirit lays the foundation for wonder. And there, in that space between who he was and who he would become, Tom began to listen. And to notice the world, to notice himself, to begin, just barely, to believe that perhaps the first step is not being chosen, but choosing to look inward. That's where the real playbook begins. Every journey has a flashpoint, a moment when the air changes and the heart remembers itself. Tom's did not arrive with applause. It arrived like a sunrise, slow, unannounced, but impossible to ignore. He was used to sitting on the sidelines, watching games he wished to play. It's not easy, wanting so badly to be seen, to touch something holy with your own hands, but the universe is generous with those who listen. The spark came as a challenge, a coach's voice, calm and steady, inviting Tom onto the field not as a hero, but as a witness to his own courage. It was small at first. A practice, a chance. An open hand being offered when he thought no one was watching. That one practice, one slip of a moment, became his ember. It lit something within, not pride but permission, he realized. Even when the world doubts you, there is an inner playbook waiting for you to read. And read he did. Study became ritual. Every throw, every catch, an offering. Failure transformed, just a chapter, not a conclusion. There was magic in repetition. Poetry in process. He stopped reaching for perfection and reached instead for presence. Every fingertip on the ball became a silent question, am I here? Am I really here? Maybe that's what happens with all great awakenings. It's not a thunderclap, but a gentle unfolding, not the outside cheering, but the inside whispering, try again. Tom listened. He moved through practice like a prayer, and every night the air in his room changed. Instead of trembling with doubt, it hummed with a quiet hope that belonging wasn't a prize but a practice. You return to it over and over. That's the spark. Did you have a moment like that? When the world didn't see you but your own heart did? When you realized devotion doesn't have to wait for someone else's permission? That is the root of all awakening. The smallest voice within saying, "And now." Just try. Tom's path was lit now not by applause, but by a steady flame, the flame you carry too, when you say yes to bearing witness to your own life, even when the lights are low and the crowd is gone. This is how dreamers become doers and doers become devoted. Let's keep going. There is no climb without gravity. No ascent without aching somewhere deep in the bone. Tom's sacred struggle was never just on the field. It was the endless tension between being enough and forever not enough. That's the strange holiness of it. Every setback felt bigger than a loss. Every missed throw, a question about his very place in the world. He was judged, overlooked, written off even by those paid to notice him. It's not your time yet. There's someone stronger, someone faster. Wait your turn. The ache was not simple disappointment. It was a sacred wound. The kind that quietly rewires a person and makes them listen deeper, work softer. Have you ever felt sidelined by your own life? Been asked to wait when your spirit wanted to sprint? Tom learned to sit with that tension. To see rejection not as a wall, but as a mirror, showing him exactly where faith was needed most. During those hard years, the rituals became everything: early mornings in empty gyms. Breathing, stretching, moving through motions on sore ankles, tired eyes, no one watching. No applause. That's where sacred struggle lives. In the spaces where devotion outweighs outcome, where you do the work because the work is who you are becoming. Some nights he'd think of quitting, letting the ache be louder than the hope, slipping back into smallness, but the inner playbook, that whisper, kept him going, not for records, not for glory, for himself. He learned a hidden law of the universe, that contrast births clarity. That struggle is a form of grace. It slows you down, it shapes your questions, it carves devotion into your bones. Some nights he'd walk outside, look up at the stars stretching over the world and ask, is it worth it? Is there more for me? He learned the struggle is the answer. Not something to run from, but something to move through, to be transformed by devotion, brick by brick, breath by breath. You know this too, don't you? That a soul's journey is never about avoiding difficulty, but about learning how to lean into it, softly, with presence, with trust. Tom's great hardship became his quiet sanctum. Not the reason he lost himself, but the very way he found his deepest truth. There comes a night when everything changes. Not with a bang, but with a simple, sacred clarity that slices through all the old confusion. A turning point is never loud. It's the hush just before the dawn. For Tom, that moment came between halves, a game hanging in the balance, expectations swirling around him like wind. Team behind, opponents hungry, and a silence growing underneath it all. He recalled all those quiet rituals, All the mornings no one saw, the repetitions, the failure transformed, and suddenly he glimpsed. This is not about the ball or the score, it's about the breath inside the body. The decision to show up anyway. He saw in himself the seed of something transcendent, not skill, but surrender. To let go of needing to win and instead choose to be present no matter the outcome. In those few moments, the crowd faded. His story faded. All that remained was himself, his hands on the ball, his feet on the ground, his breath, his devotion. He found clarity like sunlight through fog. Every loss, every smallness was just fuel for the next leap. The game changed because he changed. Perhaps in your own life there are moments when the script flips quietly. You stop searching for external validation and start singing your own name into the silence. For Tom, it was that one hallowed night, a game hanging in the balance. He learned, greatness happens not when you resist the unknown, but when you become willing to trust it. To meet each play with full presence. To love the rhythm, even when the outcome is hidden. That night he stepped onto the field not as the boy longing for applause, but as the soul in love with the process. Surrender not as a giving up, but as a giving in to the current within. To the playbook no one else can read but you. A floodgate opened inside him. From that moment onward, he didn't just play the games, he lived them breath by breath, routine by routine, carrying his own philosophy into every mundane hour. There was no magic, just faithful repetition, endless presence, making tea with the same hands that threw 1,000 passes. Embodying his truth was not an event, but a daily, simple devotion. Rising early, stretching the body with reverence, not to force, but to listen, feeding the body, tending the mind, practicing gratitude, moving through failures with soft curiosity, not judgment, competing with himself. Not the world, becoming a friend to his own limits rather than an enemy. Learning how to forgive, to reset, to be here now even when success was nowhere to be seen. That's the thing about deep transformation. The world only sees the championship, but the real magic is always the unseen. The way you tie your shoes, breathe into the pain, let mistakes be a teacher, not a curse. Tom's truth was rhythm. A devotion hidden in 100 private moments, kneeling between plays, eyes closed in hotel rooms, presence with family, even after breaking records. He learned to treat every moment like practice, a rehearsal for the sacred. That's how mastery sneaks in quietly, disguised as routine. The more he lived this way, the clearer it became. Winning takes care of itself when you belong to your own process. He let go of needing to be the best and became instead the most devoted. It's not the loud victories that change a soul, it's the silent, stubborn faith in the day-to-day. The willingness to show up over and over, even when it seems like no one notices. He was not in love with the outcome. He was in love with the journey. Maybe that is the real secret. Not seeking a finish line, but living in the freedom of beginning again and again with devotion. Sometimes a life is defined by one trait, not a statistic, not a label. For Tom, it was presence. There is a kind of attention, almost a slow magic, that happens when you bring your whole self to each moment. He became the eye of a hurricane, calm, quietly unshakable, while the world spun with expectations and demands. His teammates would speak of it, that calm, that belief, no matter what he makes you feel it's possible. What's the secret? He trusted his own rhythm, breathing, being, not forcing, just allowing. Even under pressure, he would return to the body, to the breath, to the whisper within. This is mastery, finding peace even in chaos. Tom lived it. In the highest stakes, he would find a way to come home to himself, block out the noise. Remember what matters, let each moment be enough. Winning wasn't the point, devotion was, and that presence, it became magnetic, not just for him but for everyone around him. It made hard things seem possible. Made others believe in themselves. He wasn't trying to change people, he changed the atmosphere, by being fully there, by loving the work, not the trophy. That's what legacy is, a feeling left behind long after the echo. A reminder that the true playbook is always written in the heart. Unseen, but always felt. Tom's spiritual worldview shaped every part of his journey. Listen, can you feel the rhythm? He learned to trust the push and pull of life, the seasons, the losses, the quiet victories. Each had its own beauty, its own necessity. When a play went wrong, he surrendered. Let the moment pass, didn't chase what couldn't be caught. But when opportunity arose, he listened for the invitation, not forcing but allowing. Sometimes the best plays happened not from planning but from flowing with what was alive right now. Surrender, attraction, rhythm. Moments of letting go and of showing up with everything you are. There was a hidden wisdom here, that you cannot outrun your own presence. And you cannot control every outcome, but you can participate with heart no matter what the field looks like. Every morning he practiced, not just skills but listening to the current of his own life. To know when to act, when to let go, to feel gratitude for what is, not despair for what wasn't. These are the secret laws, lived, not taught. Maybe you live them too, a quiet faith, a willingness to walk slowly when the world says run, letting your own devotion become the only playbook you really need. Now, if we could sit with the soul of Tom Brady, not the athlete but the essence, and ask, what would you whisper to us now? He smiles, sits quietly for a while, breathes steady, then he might say, start where you are, even if it isn't much. The real victory is showing up, he might say. Let struggle be your teacher, not your story. It's not what you run from, it's what you carry forward with heart. He might say, trust your rhythm. Some days will feel slow, others wild and fast. Both matter. Maybe he'd whisper, your presence is the best legacy. Let your life change the air around you. That's how you really lied. And if you asked him what he's most grateful for, it wouldn't be the wins but the quiet moments, the chance to begin again each and every dawn. So, as night deepens and you feel a new kind of calm, let's return to where we began. There are stories that change your mind. And there are stories that change your breath. This one was here to change the way you walk through the world. You've listened, soul open, heart slowed. Tom Brady's devotion is now a mirror for your own, that longing, that rhythm, that inner playbook, unwritten but ever present. Tonight's mantra is simple. Every moment is a beginning. Let's say it together like ripples over water. Every moment is a beginning. Let your breath soften. Let every plan, every worry dissolve. You are here and that is enough. Every moment is a beginning. Let it echo in your mind as you drift, as the field of dreams gives way to the field of sleep as you remember. You too are part of something sacred. Every moment is a beginning. There are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Close your eyes, if you want, let your body feel heavy, and for a moment, listen for the soft music that runs beneath all sporting arenas and living rooms, that hum you hear when you're alone after the noise has faded. Have you ever felt the call for something more than applause or recognition or even victory? Maybe there was a time when the world begged you for perfection, but all you wanted was meaning, a moment when you longed not for the next accomplishment, but for a pause, a sense of alignment, a reason to say yes to yourself. That's exactly what Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook once felt too. There is a version of devotion that isn't loud. It doesn't need the floodlights or the roar or even the win. It's quieter, woven into the slow breath behind every preparation, and the patient waiting when it seems nothing is happening. Tom walked this path not only across fields of impossible odds, but through silent corridors where doubt whispered, of course, he had gifts. But in restless, uncertain moments, what called to him was not greatness, it was presence. A hushed promise that if he listened deeper, the rules of the outer world would fall away. He was not always the Tom Brady you might picture now, standing triumphant. There were long seasons of waiting. Years when he trailed behind stronger, swifter peers, measuring himself only by the shadow on the wall at dusk, looking for a sign. His story is not shaped only by victory, but by the soulful ache of wanting, a longing not to be seen, but to become. It's that same longing that stirs in you as you listen, a knowing beneath the surface. So tonight, let's walk together, step by step, alongside this quieter journey. The game is only a metaphor for learning to hear your own sacred playbook within. If you've ever wondered where courage is born, or how devotion grows roots in the moments when no one is watching, you are already inside this story. Rest here. Breathe with the depth of someone about to begin something honest, just for themselves, and remember, the most powerful plays are not scripted, they emerge, one breath at a time, from the space where longing becomes movement, and movement becomes meaning. Let's step inside together, where the outside world quiets and every heartbeat echoes with possibility. There were days before the spotlight, before the triumph and the trophies. Childhood itself is a field, wide and untamed, with wind rustling through dreams. In those early mornings, the house was quiet, the hum of anticipation in the air like dew before sunrise. Family voices floating through kitchen doors, muted by memory, touching Tom's world like distant music. He would lie there, stare at the ceiling, and listen to possibilities brushing against the silence. There was nothing spectacular about these moments except the hunger in them, that endless ache for something just beyond reach. Inside that small, growing heart, questions swirled. Am I enough just as I am? Would I ever be chosen when it counted? Loneliness can be a sacred companion. He learned its language early, sitting with windows open, feeling the chill of hope against his chest, watching clouds drift by as if they could carry his prayers somewhere better. His hands weren't the strongest at first. His body an unfinished puzzle, but his imagination that was enormous. He saw himself running, striving, winning. But more than that, he felt something pushing him like an invisible river urging feet forward again and again, even when the odds stacked high as mountains. Sometimes longing sounds like a whisper in the dark. In the spaces between spoken words, he found the kind of yearning that doesn't leave scars, only roots. If you close your eyes now, you might remember your own beginnings, the silent questions, the quiet hunger, the sense that something infinite lived just out of sight. Tom met those inner edges and learned to walk with the unknowing, step by step, breath by brave breath. The world outside offered its lessons, friends who outpaced him, doors that didn't open, and the slow understanding that you can't force what's worthy, only prepare for it. What shaped him wasn't just talent, but tenderness, a willingness to feel it all. The trembling hope, the stumbles, the cold mornings practicing alone, this is how a legacy begins, not in the cheers but in the hush before the day starts. Where every child and every adult even now might find a fraction of themselves, listening for their own belonging, there are stories that change your mind and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt a restlessness deep in your bones? That soft ache somewhere between memory and hope, asking if maybe, just maybe, you were made for more. Sometimes it's a question that flickers in the half-light when the world quiets down and you can finally hear your own heart beating. Maybe there was a time when you walked the length of your room, tracing the grain in the floorboards with your feet, not sure what you sought but positive it was out there, waiting. Or a moment when you longed for expansion, for a path that wasn't crowded with expectation but wide open, like first light across an empty field. That's exactly what Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook once felt too. It's not the football legend, not the parade of trophies or the endlessly replayed catch, but a boy alone in the echoing rooms of his own becoming, a boy who looked out the window and wondered why his own heartbeat thundered so much louder when the game was on the line, and quietly whether that meant anything at all. You might drift into this story tonight from somewhere tired or a little bit hopeful. Maybe you're searching for rest. Maybe you want the world to slow down long enough that your own breath can catch up. You're in good company here, because before the cameras, before the bright lights and chants of a million fans, Tom was another dreamer in the dark, a soul looking for the deeper map. He heard the word underdog not as a taunt but as an ancient spell, a reminder that not everything most precious is obvious, that something hidden is always being tested, a blessing in disguise calling out the real one beneath the shell. There's a moment before sleep takes you when your guard drops and the world lines in, when you remember the bridge between who you've been and who you are becoming. That's the threshold we'll keep tonight. You don't need to be an athlete to know what it feels like to be overlooked, to hear the doubters, or to quietly doubt yourself, or to wonder if the very force that stirs your soul is just a trick of the light, or if it's the beginning of something sacred. Tonight we walk with Tom, not because his story is louder, but because it's deeper, a story stitched together with the fabric of devotion to the unseen. The inner playbook. The codes he wrote when no one was looking, driven by longing, by failures, yes, but more by the holy sense that you are never alone with your hunger. So settle in. Let the weight of your body melt into the mattress. Feel the gentle gravity that pulls you home. Because this story isn't just about touchdowns or headlines, it's about following the invisible thread. It's about knowing there is a place for your devotion, your focus, your hope. The world calls some dreams impossible, but Tom learned the old way that devotion isn't public, it's private, internal, the quiet voice that says again. If you ever wondered what it looks like to walk a sacred path in modern shoes, this is for you. Let yourself listen without rush. Let each pause be a lantern, lighting up the next step into something subtle and true. Whatever you carried here tonight, all the noise, the wish, the fatigue, it gets to be here too. You are not alone in your longing. The playbook you seek was never out there anyway. It's been waiting in you, underneath the noise all along. Welcome to the night and to yourself. There are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt a longing for something you could not name? A quiet pull deeper than desire, more certain than ambition. Maybe there was a time when the world around you moved too fast, like a season spinning by before you touched its heart. Or a time when you ached for meaning in the silence between moments, at the edge of sleep, or the hush after the cheers. That's exactly what Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook once felt too. So tonight, just breathe in the hush of the night, let your story meet his, not in the statistics or headlines, but in the little moments where everything we hunger for is already home. There was a boy who once stood at the edge of a high school field not as a prodigy but as a question whispered to the world. Before the trophies, before the lights, there was just the hush. The almost, the not yet. The quiet breath held in the chest of a young man waiting to become. In those early days, Tom grew up under soft California skies, shadows from tree branches flickering over sidewalks, light skipping off car windows as he would walk home with a mind so busy and a heart so quietly unsure. Not the kind of certainty youth is sometimes painted with, but a hunger that ran underneath every day. Maybe you know that feeling too, the longing for someone to see you, not for what you could do, but for the truth only you could carry. Sometimes it stings, that hunger. Other times it hides behind laughter or practice or the stories we tell ourselves when the world goes quiet at night. Tom was not the fastest kid, not the strongest. He sat on benches, chin tucked into knees, fridge light humming in the kitchen while everyone else slept. There was this wonder, did he matter in the silence? Was there a place for someone who was neither golden nor forgotten, but simply becoming? There are moments you remember as if they are stitched into your skin, the feel of the ball in young hands, breathing in the dusk as the sun sets over a backyard fence. Wondering, is this enough? Am I enough? For young Tom, the question lived at the soft edge of every day. Never spoken outright, but alive like a heartbeat, It was there in the little rituals, lacing up cheap sneakers, tossing spirals into the blue, dreaming bigger than the neighborhood ever let on. The aching hush between wanting and having. He kept moving, kept hoping, not just for fame or fortune, but for something that would make the world's silence feel welcoming. For a playbook that could guide not only his body but his soul. And so, early on, Tom learned to live in longing, to be comfortable inside questions, to wake up each day ready to reach, even when no one applauded, even when the finish line kept moving. Maybe that's what the world doesn't see. The tiniest moments of devotion, when it's not about glory, but about listening over and over to a voice no one else can hear. Maybe you felt it too, that sense of searching in the half-light, hungry to know your own name. Because long before he became a legend, Tom Brady was simply another soul seeking a home inside himself. Beneath the surface, where most eyes never look, there is always a first spark, a secret invitation calling you inward. For Tom, it was never a thunderclap, never a stadium roaring his name. His spark was 3 parts doubt, 1 part hope, and all the patience it takes to wait for something real. Imagine him, a little older now, eyes tracing patterns in the clouds as he dreams alone beneath Saturday skies. Outwardly quiet, but inwardly alive. So much energy swirling inside that sometimes it makes your teeth ache or your thoughts loop endlessly round the rim of sleep. In those long afternoons, there was a moment so small you'd miss it if you blinked. The pass thrown to nobody, swirling in morning fog, landing in wet grass. But the moment was not about catching or winning. It was the peace Tom felt in the quiet after the throw. The feeling of alignment, wind, breath, body, spirit, caught together in a simple, sacred repetition. For the first time, he felt attuned to something ancient, something he could neither name nor outrun. If you listen for it, there's a moment in every journey where the stillness cracks open. Tom's came not in defeat, but in resilience. Every try that didn't land right, every friend who shrugged, every time the world told him no, you're not the chosen one, yet inside, a slow-burning ember glowed. Not anger, not bravado, but a stubborn devotion to the repeating shape of hope. Throw, fail, try again, quiet as prayer. Deep within, Tom began to sense that maybe, just maybe, greatness was not something you chased. It was something you practiced, wordlessly, when nobody else was looking. In the hush, he started to catch glimpses of an inner playbook, a set of moves mapped not by coaches but by intuition. A knowing that every day of longing and every silent apology to himself mattered. So as you listen, maybe you can feel it too, the memory of a first spark. A pattern repeating, winding you back inside yourself, whispering. Whatever you are seeking is also quietly seeking you. All souls find a field of struggle, a place where the push and pull becomes a teacher. Tom's came as doubt, whittled into shape by the world's cold logic, carved into uncertainty by voices that didn't see his unseen devotion. There were games where he fumbled, knees scraped and hands muddy. There were nights he wasn't picked, mornings he stared long at himself in a mirror, searching for someone heroic beneath the edges of disappointment. Time after time, he was the backup, the understudy, the almost. Pain is a quiet teacher, but it is real. Tom learned to sit with his own ache, Instead of hiding from it, he pressed against it as if sorrow might be a door, not a dead end. In locker rooms where laughter spiked and fell, he hid his confusion inside soft smiles. He did not rage, did not run. He breathed, and the breath became his thread through. A heartbreak, rejection, all the tiny humiliations that come from not fitting the role expected of you. He let them burn, slow and silent. That is the sacred struggle. Not the drama of enemies or epic failures, but the quieter wars, the longing to belong, the search for meaning, the ache of not knowing what comes next. Yet even then, Tom held something rare, a willingness to try again. And to show up day after day without any promise of glory. In those years, his struggle became an apprenticeship to the soul. Every bruise was a message, be present. Every doubt an invitation, trust the path even when it's hidden. This is something all of us know in our bones, the weight of not enough. The feeling that the world is made for other people's victories and you're just practicing at the edge. But there, inside the struggle, a strange grace formed. Tom learned to listen inward, to follow a rhythm no one else could hear. The struggle didn't break him, it seasoned him. It became the soil for every future bloom. There comes a night for all of us when the air shifts. A subtle turning point, tectonic but quiet. For Tom, it was not a single touchdown or public victory, but an inward click, a deep exhale that made the impossible seem suddenly near. You know those moments. The tectonic shift inside, when you realize who you are becoming is more important than who you thought you were. For Tom, it might have come in a late-night practice, stars cut sharp above the field, sweat cooling on his brow. Or perhaps in the hush of a locker room where at last someone called his name and meant it, not as backup but as beacon. With every slow step, the old doubts dropped away like leaves. There is a steep silence before transformation, a calm before the world brightens. He let go of needing to be chosen and instead chose himself. He stopped gripping the steering wheel of destiny. Instead, he opened, receiving each moment as it came, breathing through the fear with a softness he'd practiced for years. Metaphors lived in him, the ocean tide that surrenders and returns, the forest trunk that grows slow beneath the bark. He became both the seeker and the found. Not in a blaze of sound, but in the gentle hush of someone finally trusting the story unfolding. This is the moment that changes the air around a person, the way gravity shifts in a dream. Maybe you too have stood in that threshold, where you no longer ache to be something more. Where just being right here became enough. And for Tom, every silent practice, every unnoticed act of devotion became not a path upward but a coming home. When the inner playbook writes itself into your bones, the world begins to ripple. Tom started living his truth not by shouting it but by breathing it. He became a student of the moment, treating every repetition as ritual. Instead of striving for applause, he settled into a rhythm, breath and throw, step and reset. The mundane became sacred, every routine a prayer. This was not about performance. It was about aligning with something real. He moved in the world like someone who trusted the pace of nature, roots forming unseen, branches patient for spring. Failures still happened, pain still came. But rather than fleeing, he leaned in, meeting challenge with presence, meeting loss with curiosity. The teamwork became a form of love. Each pass, each handshake, a thread in the hidden fabric of a larger game, not football, but being alive alongside others. It's a quiet kind of mastery, devotion without drama. He rose each day willing to do the small things that faith requires. Show up, repeat the steps, let gratitude rise between the ordinary beats of a song only a few can hear. Tom lived less like a champion and more like a witness. He noticed, he cared. He allowed the world to shape him, knowing mastery is not a destination but a daily tending to the flame. In these years, the most important victories were invisible, the kind that shaped his character, the ones that softened his edges and opened his hands to give more than he received. And you listening, maybe you have places in your life where you long to embody what matters, even if nobody sees the effort. Let yourself remember how devotion transforms the smallest act into something holy. A true mastery happens so quietly you almost miss it. For Tom, it wasn't only his ability to win, it was the way he became a center of calm in any storm. Teammates felt it, a gravity around him that steadied the chaos. Fans saw it in his eyes, not arrogance, not detachment, but a grounded certainty born from years of tending to the inner field. His strength was not in the arm, but in the breath between movement and pause. Emotional mastery lived in the space between plays when everything slows but the world still expects. When pressure pikes, he didn't flinch, he listened, he reset, he let the moment arrive fully before acting. This is a rare gift. Most of us react, hustle, tense against the unknown. Tom cultivated a second nature to be slow where others rushed, steady when the storm rose, centered amid any noise. That was his real legacy. Not records or rings, but the quiet assurance his presence brought to the room. Even off the field, this mastery rippled outward in the way he honored others, listened without agenda, encouraged each person to be their best selves. The truest mastery, it turns out, is not possession but presence. Hold this for a second, you too have that capacity deep down to be the eye in your own storm. To slow the breath, feel your center, and let presence lead where pressure pulls. Some people live by rules, but Tom lived by rhythms. An inner dance unseen but heard by the soul. Without needing the language of mystics, you could see it. He walked the world in tune with a quiet universe, moving with surrender when others forced, attracting opportunities not by clutching, but by tending to his own alignment. In hard moments, he let go instead of gripping harder. When decisions weighed heavy, he listened. He followed his core, not the crowd. He trusted in the unseen, letting seasons come and go, letting wins and losses be like tides. There was a wisdom in his rhythm, slowing down so he could speed up. Polarities met with grace, opposites honored instead of avoided. You could feel it in the way he would pause after a play, eyes inward for a split second, letting the next step arise organically. He never forced the outcome, he allowed it. This is a spiritual worldview without labels, the hidden law of his heart. When you honor your own rhythm, the world opens in response. When you move with presence, the path unfolds beneath your feet. Feel for a moment, where does your own life ask for this surrender, this attraction, this trust in your own unseeable rhythm? Tonight, in the hush, imagine inviting Tom's essence in for a conversation by the fireside of your soul. The world is quiet. You ask the question you've always wanted to ask. What do you know now that we can carry forward with us? Tom's soul smiles, gentle and patient. He doesn't speak in speeches, his words arrive like water, soft and real. First, he says, devotion does not mean arrival. It means loving the journey enough to keep walking with it, even when it's hard, especially when no one's watching. Second, the real playbook is written anew each day. It's not a set of instructions, but a set of questions. Let yourself not know and let that space become your teacher. Third, pressure is not proof of weakness, but of care. If you don't feel something, it doesn't matter. But if your heart trembles, if your breath gets short, that is a sign you are alive, you are present, you are inside the game. Fourth, trust doesn't mean you skip fear. It means letting the fear walk with you, not behind or ahead, but right at your side and taking every step anyway. And finally, every small, silent act matters more than any headline or big moment. Devote yourself to the invisible and see how the visible world shifts. Let these reflections settle in like dawn, knowing you can always return to this quiet soul space whenever you long for guidance. So as the night deepens, let yourself rest in the gentle closing of this soul bio. There are stories the world tells us about success, about greatness, but the ones that endure are slow-grown, steady, rooted in something unseen. Tom Brady's quiet devotion to the inner playbook is not meant to be admired from afar, but lived, breathed, remembered in every moment. The mantra I leave you with tonight is simple: I trust the rhythm within. I trust the rhythm within. I trust the rhythm within. With every inhale, let those words settle deeper. With every exhale, feel your own devotion rising from the silent places. In the hush of this night, listen again. I trust the rhythm within. I trust the rhythm within. I trust the rhythm within. And as you drift toward sleep, carry that gentle truth with you. You are part of this sacred rhythm, this ancient playbook. You too are home in your own quiet brilliance. May you walk softly, devoted to the truth alive inside tonight and always. Good night from the modern mystic. Dream slow. Dream true and trust the rhythm within. There are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt the hush inside you when everyone expects noise? Maybe there was a time when you looked in the mirror not to see your face, but to search for your purpose. A moment when you longed for something more than just applause or winning or the map everyone said you should follow. That's exactly what Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook once felt too. Let your breath slow. Let your body soften wherever you are right now. This is not a story about trophies or football or even fame. This is a story about the slow, steady devotion to the secret playbook inside each of us. The kind you open only when the world is quiet, the kind you trust when the lights feel too bright, and the pressure builds on your chest. Tom's story isn't about numbers on a scoreboard. It's about the silent code hidden deep inside, the code that calls a person out of comfort. and towards something more honest, more awake. Before the victory parades and famous moments, there was a boy sitting on the edge of his bed at night, listening to the sound of his own hope. Not for applause, but for the feeling that he belonged in his own skin. Have you ever felt like you might not be enough, or wondered if you were built for the world you're living in? Have you ever stayed up late, replaying your mistakes, wondering if you could begin again the next day? That's where Tom's devotion begins. He teaches us that it's in the whisper, not the shout, in the space between one breath and the next. That's where the true playbook lives. So as you listen, imagine this story as a lantern, gentle light for your journey inward. Tonight, let yourself be a little softer on the inside. Let go of what you think the world expects. Let go of who you're supposed to be just for this moment. Feel yourself steady, unhurried, almost as if you're walking through a forest at dusk with every word. Let permission grow to see your own story mirrored here. This is an invitation into the sacred rhythms beneath achievement, into the deeper heartbeat underneath success, every step, every challenge. Every breath Tom took was also a search for inner belonging. Let this story be a gentle reminder that there is more to you too. You are not just your victories or your defeats. You are not just the roles you've played or the score you've kept. You are here to find your own quiet playbook to remember. And as you sink into rest, let's begin. There are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Let the night gather gently around you. Let your bones settle, heart steady, and mind loosen. Have you ever felt the hush before a new beginning? That hush that covers you like dew just before sunrise? Maybe there was a time when you wondered how to listen for the next step. Maybe you ached for direction, not from a coach or a playbook, but from that deep hallway within, the one that whispers, not yells. A moment when you longed for belonging, for a reason to trust your own unfolding. To feel the meaning just beneath the endless action, to pause and sense maybe you're exactly where you need to be. That's exactly what Tom Brady, a devotion to the inner playbook, once felt too, not the name on a jersey, not the man on a stage, but a soft searching. Imagine it, the hush beneath noisy expectations. He was a kid once, small for his dreams but vast with longing, waiting for the world to see him, to call him onto some field. But the real game, it started behind his ribs, a place of silent practice where legs rested but the heart rehearsed over and over until it became its own kind of worship. Rest now. Imagine childhood not as a list of dates, but as moments stretched out across a wide internal sky. There were days the world felt sharp, where being picked last stung, but also invited him deeper. Underneath the desire to win lived the urge just to belong, to be claimed, to matter. Sometimes in those quiet spaces he'd hear the old doubts surface. Why not me? What's missing? Am I enough? Even when all is silent. If you've known that ache, you already know Tom's first real playbook was invisible. It was soul-linked, sprouting not from a chalkboard but from the soil of not yet seen potential. Tonight, let's hold that further. Just let the hours go soft as you listen back through the years to the beginning, to the smallness, and to the longing. Notice how it mirrors something in you, how we all start along the edges, waiting to step in. Now let's remember pieces of a boy shaped by uncertainty, guided by a devotion that couldn't be diagrammed, only felt. Somehow, in the quietest part of youth, Tom found a light to circle, a lighthouse not seen but sensed. He would keep returning. To the field, yes, but more truthfully to the inner mighty place, where effort mites faith and hope kindles each uncertain sunrise, and maybe, as you listen, you're invited there too. To the sunrise of your own longing, to the moment before you're seen, to the vast, luminous hush that comes before greatness or peace or being known. We start together in this hush, breathing in what the night has to offer, meeting ourselves underneath the story, ready to remember, with Tom, what devotion really means. When you're ready, sink with me into the memory of an early life shaped by longing, warmed by the hope that purpose always begins as an echo. Oh, there are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt the world was asking you to be louder than you really are? Or that somewhere underneath all the noise you're following a quiet code, something you can't name but you trust? Maybe there was a time when your heart beat so quietly nobody noticed but you did. Or a moment when the path before you wasn't lit by stadium lights, but by some small candle inside your chest. Perhaps you've woken before dawn, not for the world's applause, but because devotion calls you upward before anyone else is watching. That's exactly what Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook once felt too. Every legend is a mirror. Every shadow on the field reflects a child's longing to belong, to prove, to be known. And beneath the accolades, the story begins with a quiet, searching heart. In this drifting space tonight, you and I will travel the back roads of Tom's spirit, not the headlines, not the victories shouted from rooftops, but the sacred playbook written behind closed eyelids where nobody else could see. Let's let go of what you think you know. Feel the gentle weight of your breath. Imagine rooting into earth, your body floating, safe as if the story could hold you. The spiral of a football turning slow motion through moonlight. The hush before a choice. This is not motivation, not the call to do more, be more, win more. This is about the quiet game behind the games, the unspoken law every mystic lives by. The one Tom carried when cameras turned away. The moments kneeling in silence after the world went to sleep. The devotion that never made the highlight reel. Some tailies are for waking hours. This one is for the night inside you, for the place where you are holy even when you feel unseen. What if tonight you surrendered to your own softness? What if you saw yourself not as someone trying to win, but as a soul devoted to the invisible? Let's walk together, slow, step by step, through the quiet fields of devotion, the spaces where champions are not made but remembered. Where you and Tom might not be so different after all. There are stories that change your mind, and there are stories that change your breath. This one will change the way you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of Tom Brady devotion to the inner playbook, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something ancient within you. Have you ever felt like there's a pulse in your chest that won't quiet, a question beneath every ordinary moment? Maybe there was a time when you were young and the room was quiet, but your soul was restless more than boredom. It was a wild, aching curiosity, a sense you were built for something if only you knew what the playbook said. Sometimes, late at night, you might remember that feeling, the ache for alignment. The quiet hope that there's a deeper game unfolding, some secret code just beyond the reach of easy answers. That's exactly what Tom Brady, devotion to the inner playbook, once felt too, not as a champion. Not as a headline, but as a kid who just wanted to know. Who stared at the ceiling in a small room, wondering who he could be if he could only learn the rhythm of devotion, the next quiet move. Let tonight be a gentle mirror. We're not here to marvel at records or replay old games. We're here to touch that deeper script, the unspoken rules that shaped a life and maybe someday yours too. Just breathe and drift in. Imagine a young soul, longing for motion, fingers tapping against a desk, heart searching for the pattern beneath the noise, a thunderstorm of questions in the belly, calm on the surface. That's where he began and maybe where you begin again tonight. You don't have to know the score here. You don't need a jersey or stadium lights. All you need is your own pulse, of the soft insistence that there is more. So settle in, let the outside world fade to a gentle hum, and let's trace the steps of devotion, one subtle page at a time. Maybe you're here because you too are looking for the next chapter. For a practice, a philosophy, a kind companionship, or maybe you just need the quiet, nameless comfort of being seen, not in your victories, but in your vulnerable hope. Tonight, together, we'll walk the long, slow arc of Tom's journey. We'll listen for those soul questions between the lines. We'll learn how the real victory wasn't on the field, but in the gentle turning of spirit, the way a life can be folded and refolded until it becomes devotion. If you've ever wondered how a legend listens to silence, or how the heart chooses to play, even when no one's keeping score, you're in good company tonight. Soften your brow, let the breath deepen. The story is waiting, and so perhaps are you. He came from stillness and also from longing, not a hunger for trophies, applause, or grand announcements, but a much quieter pulse, the kind of hunger you feel when the house is asleep, and the world is small, and your thoughts are bigger than your body. The neighborhood is ordinary, but the air feels charged with possibility. Tom walks the sidewalks at dusk, the sky hanging low with the promise of rain, and every empty streetlight is a question mark. Who am I really? What makes a person great? Is it written in the genes or in the margins between decisions, the hours no one sees? His home is loving, but the love is daily, not flashy. His family eats together, sometimes laughing, sometimes just chewing in silence. He learns that most things don't come with clear instructions, and that the world won't always clap for you, even when you show up and try, but maybe there's something holy in the trying. He's a kid who loses and tries again. A skinny frame, wrists a little bony, not the fastest or the tallest, but there is this stubbornness. A root growing sideways, not shallow but persistent. He hears the word no as a kind of dare, not a verdict. The quietest fire cooks the richest meals, days stretch out. The school halls echo with the shuffling of shoes and hopes and sometimes loneliness. He wonders not so much, will I make it, but will I ever be enough, some nights as the world slips out of focus. He whispers to himself, maybe greatness isn't a thunderclap, but an endless series of tiny, unnoticed choices. You and I know that feeling, the ache for meaning. The secret hunger for more than simply winning. The heart wants what it can devote itself to through it all. Tom leans on patterns, fixes a gaze on the future, but holds his breath in the present long before he became a symbol. He was just a seeker, following the thread of curiosity through the dark and quiet. There's no magic moment, just a slow simmer. An inner voice rising, asking, could there be more if I gave more? He learns to listen, to mix discipline with wonder. He finds the hidden playbook, not in the hands, but in the heart. And in this quiet space, you might sense a familiar longing, the wish to believe that slow growth means something, that every morning is a fresh page, not just for champions, but for anyone daring enough to show up for themselves. Breathe in, let yourself feel the boy within the story, the one who aches, who dreams, who believes softly, stubbornly, that there is something sacred in the steady attempt. Maybe it's always been about this, not the moment you arrive, but every step, every doubt, every secret spark that calls you further in. And then there's a night that shifts everything, not on a field but in a feeling. A small moment, hardly worth a headline, but inside something catches fire. Tom's sitting alone after a rough practice. The sky is ink black out his window. His hands hurt from throwing, chest is tight with the taste of almost quitting. There's a radio playing, soft static in the background. Some part of him feels like disappearing, but then there's this strange, gentle clarity. He remembers his first touchdown, the laughter, the way the world can open with a single choice, and he decides not to go big, not to be seen, but to keep showing up. For himself, for the sake of devotion. It isn't a pledge, but a small, stubborn yes. Next morning everything looks the same, but inside there's a new current. Instead of searching for applause, he leans into routine, trusting that invisible work plants visible roots. It's a secret contract. To keep showing up, heart open, breath steady, even when it feels like nobody's watching. That's how a spark starts, not with fireworks, with a gentle honoring of the smallest urge to play, to persist, to listen. He finds a rhythm, one step, one breath, one practice, one pause, not for the crowd, but for the comfort of feeling himself move in sequence with something ancient. Sometimes the heroic heroic act is staying on the path, when there's no glitter or stage or watcher, just a heartbeat and a stubborn patience. In that quiet, something takes root. A belief that mastery is not about arrival, but about attention, and that this, in the end, will become his most powerful play, devotion to the invisible. But inner playbooks are not written in ink, they're tested by weather, by shadow, by loss, so there's strain. An injury, a benching, a season lost when the world keeps moving on without him. He feels the ache of being left out, the sting of watching from the sidelines while others race ahead. At first it feels like exile, the world's cold shoulder, the storm that won't break. He grieves quietly, not just for missed games, but for the sense that maybe devotion isn't enough. In those silent mornings, when the room is gray and hope is thin, he sits with his own disappointment. No crowd, no whistle, no one to impress. Just the honest ache of effort gone unnoticed, but hardship, he learns, is not a punishment. It's a slow, tough teacher. Devotion turns out to be not just fire, but the willingness to stay, even when you're not chosen, even when the doors close. He grits his teeth, lets the tears come, lets the bitterness burn out quietly in the safety of dusk. There's nothing glamorous about heartbreak, about feeling unseen. But there is, buried in the pain, a deeper kind of trust that the process itself is sacred, even when the prize disappears. Time moves slow in those seasons. The world doesn't care for his story. The papers write other names. But inside, the roots move deeper. He learns to get up with the sun, jog when no one is watching, find satisfaction in the invisible labor. He stops asking why and learns instead to ask, where can I grow from here? It is humility, but also strength. He learns to stand inside the struggle, to bear witness to himself. This sacred struggle is the soil of the soul. The hidden work becomes the proof, not that he will win, but that he will endure. That devotion is not a contract for reward, but a promise to keep returning, letting go of outcomes. He clings to process, learning that sometimes the thing that shapes you most is what you survive, not what you conquer. If you find yourself in a similar season, unchosen, unseen, uncertain, let this gentle truth rest on your pillow. You are not forgotten. Your quiet work has meaning, even if only you can name it, and after the storm there's a turning. A slow dawn creeping in, not as a fanfare but as a softening. He wakes one day and the heaviness is lighter. The breath comes easier. He moves in his own way, not to become, but to belong. He belongs to the practice, to the devotion itself. There's a moment, standing on a field or simply breathing alone, when he stops asking to be chosen. He just shows up, heart bare, willing to give his best, because that is enough, and from that flow everything changes. He starts not with ambition but with acceptance. He lets each routine be its own reward, each throw, each stretch, each recovery, a chance to honor the devotion, not the destination. He learns to love the act itself, the simple, sacred repetition. No longer chasing glory, he finds contentment in the ritual, the meditation of effort, the prayer of presence. The world catches glimpses of his transformation, but inside it's not about fame, it's about flow. The way life opens when you stop gripping at control and start listening to what the moment asks of you. He carries this ease like a secret vow, trusting that every step, whether backward or forward, is part of the greater dance. He walks with less worry, more reverence. This turning point is a return to the source, to the quiet wisdom you felt as a child on those empty, glowing streets, the knowledge that you are already enough just by being devoted. And so he begins truly to live his truth. Now, devotion is not something he does, it's who he is. He wakes with intention, lights a candle of habit every morning, letting the flame shape his day. Every act, gearing up, stretching, breathing, eating, even sitting in stillness, becomes part of the great practice. He walks in rhythm, moves with reverence, doesn't cut corners even when no one's looking, reads the same page, practices the same throw, eats thoughtfully, speaks softly, lets patience carve new muscles in his soul. Friends wonder at his discipline. Some call it obsession, others call it genius. But it's simpler than that, it's an agreement with himself. To meet each morning fresh, to treat each moment like a down and not to win, but to witness how deep devotion can go. Small victories over doubt, fatigue, routine, these are the trophies he learns to cherish. He lets the world pass by sometimes, misses parties for meditation, misses gossip for gratitude. He lives on his terms, quiet but resolute, and in doing so opens the kind of strength that doesn't need proving. Each season he shapes himself anew. In his rituals he finds renewal. In his solitude he finds company. He lets love lead his action, listens first, decides slow, moves consistent, rests with purpose, no sudden leaps. Just the steady play-by-play of choosing the path a dozen, 100 times a day. If the world sees a legend, he sees a learner, not a finished project but a living experiment. He allows himself setbacks, embraces imperfection, turns tears to teaching. And his legacy, even before it's known, is in the intimacy between effort and heart, the private triumphs, the silent peace. Maybe you too are here tonight seeking a way to live with deeper devotion. May Tom's rhythm remind you there is no one watching, just the sacred page, the steady heart, the next right move. In time, his mastery grows, not through domination, but through deep relationship. He understands his body as a vessel, honors every ache, every quirk, every gift. He listens, adapts, forgives mistakes, recovers gentle. He lets go of perfection and finds freedom in the process. It's not that he never doubts or never fails. He simply lets those stumbles be guideposts, not prisons. His emotional mastery is not stoicism, but an honest